For today's critical thought, I want to discuss kind of the fallout of all the live service games that have been announcing they're being closed lately. I want to discuss what it's like to make a year-round game and why do so many mobile games tend to survive where the larger and more expensive games tend to suffer when it comes to their content. As a brief recap, the reason why we've seen so many live service games for mobile and AAA is that these games can become an effective license to print money, and even the small ones can still end up doing immense profits, with some mobile games on the smaller side reporting 5 million a month in revenue, and larger ones 50 million and plus. And that is kind of reserved for games like Genshin Impact, Blue Archive, and so on. But the point for today is when it comes to live service, this is not an easy genre to work in, and it's not an easy one to keep supporting. And this is where a lot of AAA studios tend to fail when it comes to content. When you're building a year-round game, you need to be thinking about essentially three broad categories of content that's going to be developed: short, mid, and long term. Short-term content, this is effectively your monetization model. What do you expect people to spend money on that you can provide, and they will hopefully shower you with their credit card numbers? For many mobile games and so on, the choice is very obvious. Gotcha banners, SSRs, URs, LRs, SSSR, LR, UR, BSLR, UTV, however you want to describe the acronym. The gacha and character-driven design of a lot of mobile games brings in a lot of money because this content, it drives gameplay. It drives a player to have a new tool, a new toy, some crazy new character or power or weapon. And that is a very effective form of monetization that we don't have the space to get into for today's video. But it has certainly proven to work really well. Now, with that said, in order to do short-form content right, you need to be delivering it regularly or frequently. So here's a little pop quiz for everyone watching. When I say frequent content in this respect, what time frame do you think? A week? Month? 8 months? 2 weeks? 4 days? Let me know in the comments down below. But what we've seen from the mobile space is that typically you want to be putting out or adding new content in short form at minimum once every 2 weeks, and at the longest period of time, once a month. And this is something that for a lot of live service games is non-negotiable. People should always be excited about what you have and what is coming how many days or weeks in the future. And many of the more long-standing live service games, they are able to kind of go back through their well of content to have a re-release of a banner. Arknights does this quite frequently, especially when they have year-round limited banners. And seasonal stuff in these games is always a hot ticket. When it's the holiday season, when it's the summertime, there will most likely be some kind of super limited seasonal character coming back, and if you don't get them, then you're going to have to wait another 365 days. And a game that has been doing short-form content or short-term content really well lately has arguably been Marvel Snap. They have been releasing new cards. I think it's like one every week, one every 2 weeks, and it's doing a really great job of just breaking the meta and just keeping people excited about whatever new card comes, and that will completely break the rules of the game until the next new card comes, which will then break the rules even more. Now, the next category is mid-term content. And for traditional games or developers in this space, mid-term content for a live service game could really be considered expansions or DLC level content. This is when we add new maps, new story chapters. We're expanding the modes and the content that are in the game. So Arknights does this really well with having new story events, limited time kind of mini chapters that change the rules, that you get rewards while you're playing while they're active. Many games will have like special stories, and again, it's really one of those things that it's as big as you want to make it. And this content, typically we would say short on the short end of the scale, maybe one every 2 to 3 months, but at most, I would say 4 to 6 months. This is again content that people will point to your game to say that it is growing, that your game is fundamentally a larger and greater game now than it was, 5 months ago or at 1.0. And this is an area where a lot of AAA developers have really struggled with their games, because they typically tend to focus on short-term kind of rewards and investment. Hey, we'll introduce a new character. Here's 27 more cosmetics. Here's 15 more hats. And it's one of those areas where you need to keep adding content. And more importantly, when we talk about midterm and long-term content in this video, this is not stuff that explicitly has a purchase price. A lot of the larger games will release expansions and DLC like this as, something that you have to pay for. You need to spend $24.99 on this, or $10, or whatever. But you see, where live service games are the best ones go is that they focus their monetization specifically on the short-term content, and then the mid and long-term stuff is essentially the icing on the cake. It's there to kind of reward players and reward the game for doing well, so that people will then go and spend more money, so they get to deliver more content, and we repeat for as long as the sun is still bright in the sky. And speaking of that, the third category, long-term, this is one area where explicitly AAA developers have predominantly failed on. You see, long-term content, this is when, in essence, you're kind of building a sequel into your own live service game. This is when we're adding in brand new gameplay systems and brand new content. Stuff that was not in your game, or even these systems were even integrated in your game at 1.0. And this is where it gets very complicated to support a live service game, because you are essentially having to build the sequel within the base title. Genshin Impact and MiHoYo are probably the kings of this with their games. They're right now talking about their own MiHoYo-verse, and they're going to be closing, I think, Honkai Impact to deliver a brand new game, and they already probably have plans for when Genshin Impact to move on from that one. So they are very aware of kind of this super long game strategy for their titles. From what I've played with Arknights, they've added in additional modes, including SSS, which I do not remember what that stands for, Integrated Strategy, which is their roguelike mode, and I'm sure they have more coming down the line. But as I said a few minutes ago, this content, in terms of accessing it, is 100% free. I don't need to spend 1 cent, there are no expansion prices. Again, the monetization of a good live service game is focused on the short term. And then that will then support and supplement the rest of the content. To go back to Marvel's Avengers, as a very serious question, as that's another game that has been revealed that's having its doors shut down. What have they added in the past, 3 years now, that is entirely original? And a new character and a new area does not count. We are talking original gameplay, that any of these loops were not in the original release. And this is the tough question for a lot of the AAA side of live service games. We could argue that Fortnite is a good example in this respect, where every time a season ends and they start a brand new one, they completely rebuild and re-alter the map. So again, Fortnite has grown so much from its first season to wherever it is now. Again, I don't play it, so I can't tell you exactly where that is. The point is that if you want a live service game to keep going, You have to have it keep growing. And that means you must have a game plan right out of the gate, even before the game is released, as to where do you see things in 4 months, 8 months, a year, 2 years. For a lot of these successful mobile and live service games in that respect, many of them will delay their global release for at least 6 months to a year, simply to gauge the market and also have content developed so that they have a game plan for going forward on global. And you cannot go into a live service game without this. And again, you need content in all three categories to succeed. You need to have the short term in order to drive monetization. It also keeps people engaged week by week, month by month. You need to have midterm content that gets people excited around these mini events that will drive new things to do that, of course, will be then factored into the monetization and get them to spend. And again, you must have long-term support. You need to be thinking about how is this game going to change next year? And here's another big point. We're not talking about balance patches. Some developers will just view this as we're just going to change the meta. No. If you want your game to keep growing, if you want to drive interest beyond just the hardcore fans, you need to prove to people that there is more content coming. There are more things you can do. There are more aspects to this game. There are more areas that you can reach beyond just whatever your basic loop was that you established with year 1 or month 1. And for a lot of these live service games, the ones that have failed, when I was looking up which ones they were, a few that we've even tried, it didn't seem like there was anything new in this respect. And you need to be able to kind of get off the ground running when it comes to a live service game. The first 2 to 3 months of a new live service game is a pivotal time to establish what is your short-term monetization going to be, what do events look like in your game, and what is your roadmap for the next 6 months, year, 2, 3, 4, 5 years down the line. Because again, the most successful live service games, when they hit that echelon, they become a license to print money, and they can keep going until basically the developer just says, you know what, we're tired of money now. We can stop this. And I know that is the dream for a lot of AAA studios and publishers. But it takes a lot of work, and it takes this kind of revolving door of money coming in to then put it out for more content to get more money to come in. And if you think that you can just go to sleep or rest on a really good banner, and that's all your content for the next 8 months, you're not going to be making a successful live service game. And it may still do well. You may still have a hardcore fan base, but you're not going to be bringing in new people. And this is where the marketing and brand awareness comes in. Every new event is another chance to market your game. It's another chance to get influencers and popular streamers to play your game. That drives more people to check it out. This is when we have kind of the returning package or returning player reward system. And then if they stay around, great. If they go, they may come back for your yearly anniversary or your special event when you announce some crazy super limited character. Or this is when you add in your racing first-person shooter visual novel spaceship mode that you've been working on for the last 2 years. To wrap things up for our video, live service is the big time for studios. It is a double-edged sword if there ever was one for a studio. When it works, you can turn into the next MiHoYoverse, which is not easy to say, or Fortnite. But if you think that you can just, again, put out a game, maybe release a new shirt, a new pants, or even just put out a new map once every 6 months and that's going to bring in the money, it is not going to work. You need to have an established game plan for the kind of content you're going to put out, the kind of content that's coming in the midterm, and how are you going to grow this game. So for those of you watching, what are some good examples, whether there are just mobile or just live servers in general, of games that have fundamentally changed year by year? And to throw a little wrinkle in, we're not counting Path of Exile and Warframe, those are the easy answers. So give me some other ones down below. Be sure to do the liking, subscribing, bell ring, and all that. Visit our Discord and Patreon, and come back for daily discussions on game design here and on game wisdom, where he's in the art and science of games.